Okay, I was hired in 1974 as a part-time instructor, and I was teaching biology. There were a few courses in horticulture related. One of them was the Introduction to Horticulture, and I was asked to teach that as well as the Introduction to Biology. And that was in the Natural Science Division at that time, which was on the quarter system. And just reflecting back on it, it was a wonderful way of setting up with 11 weeks, and nobody got bored. You never had a problem with that. And also we set up, we being deans at that time, set up more of advanced courses, so we'd have sequencing. But it was because of the advanced courses and working on the horticulture aspect that finally I was asked to go for an interview, at which time I did receive the position. I was the first in the horticulture program as a full-time instructor, and I developed the curriculum. And I would go to Cal Poly and talk to the deans there and other schools, including San Luis Obispo.
What year?
And this was in 1975 that I became full-time instructor. And I finished my stay here in 2011, so I had 36 years here. And they were wonderful. I had a good time.
1977 I was hired, classified employee, and I directed the EOPS program. What's interesting is that I wasn't the first pick. I was the second pick, and I found out later that the first person actually questioned the salary. And I said, knowing this is the growing school district at the time, and there was all kinds of possibilities and expansion, I knew that coming in, making less than when I taught at Lenox High School, I figured, you know what, I'll take whatever you got, because I knew there would be program growth. So anyhow, I kind of lucked out. 1977, I think June is when I started. My job was to recruit Latinos, low-income students to Saddleback College, to open the door. And while there was, on paper, there was an interest, in reality, there's a great deal of resistance. I remember my first month walking on campus, and someone asked me if I was a new janitor on campus. That's after I just required my master's degree and felt I was ready to go ahead and enter the professional ranks of a faculty. And right away, that was an indicator of my challenge, because it was resistance by people and institutional rules that really challenged me to fulfill my job, was to bring low-income people, especially Latinos, on campus. That wasn't easy. So I had a series of conflicts with staff and institution to make that happen. That was harsh. That was harsh, being paid to do that, but yet having that resistance. And that resistance was, didn't last just 1 month, it was historical. Things improved over a year, but it continues to be a challenge. But back then, it was very conflictive, very challenging, very confrontational, and it's the kind of history that some people wouldn't want to hear or talk about, because those kind of things don't happen at Saddleback College. My job was to recruit, retain, and help students transfer low-income. Mary Long was the financial aid director. She wrote the grant, and Bill Kelly, I think, was involved, and they were both very, very supportive. It was called soft money, meaning state grant. And so you have to demonstrate and document how many poor people you can identify to serve. So the allocation was based upon the number documented. So the first month I had people saying, there's no poor people in South County. But I remember my salary was $16,000. That covered everything, services and my salary. And that was the grant. So my job was year to year to document those who were eligible based upon income on 1040s in the community. So it was hardcore data, show the data, give the service, establish a need, and then develop the program. So my job was to be in the community door to door, school to school, and to literally talk to parents and students to bring students on campus. Because at that time, there's a huge gap between the Latino community and Latino participation on campus. You didn't see too many of us with the same paint job. That's what it came down to. So it was a new experience for those who didn't have contact with people of color and who were low income. And then on the other side, it was serving young people who had limited or no experience being in the culture of a college. So given those two situations, it was prime for conflict. So that was, it was harsh, but I think I realized it was, because I didn't plan on staying here for over 30 years. My wife and I talked about, well, 2 years here, then we'll move elsewhere in California, because we're mobile, no children, we can move around. But I think once I experienced the challenge, I think after I saw the need grow and the response from some staff and community members, I realized that I needed to be here. But it wasn't all joyful experience. You know what I mean? There was joy and satisfaction, but there was harsh and even ugly experiences of prejudice and racism that made me angry. And I remember having to really think through that. And I learned over the years, and even then, you direct your anger towards positive contribution and positive programs and meet positive people or supportive people. Although I had my share of going to war with staff here on campus. They're very harsh. I was a classified employee, and it was for 3 years, and I had my master's. And at that time, Bob Jacobson was the dean. And Bob was always supportive. And Bob could see he understood the need. I think Jack Schwarzbaugh was his supervisor, then Bob Jacobson. But I worked closely with Bob. But he saw the need. He saw he understood the purpose of the program. He was supportive. He saw what I had to offer. And so he said, it's going to take time, but our goal should be to make you faculty. We should be able to justify it. But you have to work and make the program work, show there's need and justification and support, and to establish that level of need, so that he can argue this needs to be a faculty position, not classified. So it took 3 years, and I remember him talking about it. The first year, while there were people verbally supportive, probably the most supportive person was the financial aid director, Mary Long, who was just a very, and she wrote the grant. Other than that, I was just learning on my own. Small campus, but everyone doing their own thing. And it was my first community college experience. That's when I met Mike Merrifield, and he was new, and we both kind of said, we got to understand this institution well, because we have to operate within it. And so we learned, taught each other, and he was probably the most active supportive person, because he was the director of the tutorial center. So he helped provide supportive services for low-income students, as retention was one of the goals. But at that time, we were winging it. We were not experts. We were rookies, and we, would deal with each situation as best we could, and so we fed off each other, because his goal was to serve the underprepared as well as prepared. Mm-hmm. My goal was to serve the underprepared and the low income. Mm-hmm. So we had an overlap there. Plus, Mike had a social conscience, and so we had a lot we shared in terms of our professional interests and goals and values. But those first 2 or 3 years were tough. After a while, it takes a while to establish relationships. Yeah. And so there were a core of people that were helpful, but there were also a core of people that were resistant. And the resistance sometimes is not overt. Yeah. It can be very subtle. And so I had to learn the subtleties of just resistance and prejudicial attitudes from all levels of staff. So I was I'll tell you, I learned well this college. I learned very well how a college works from top to bottom. But we had a successful program. I mean, we did some very good things. So basically what I did was the retention, recruitment, transfer, and cultural activities. And through that, the fourth year, as you asked me, I moved towards a faculty position. Now I was involved in academic senate. I was involved in union activities, and so being more of the core of the institution, especially in instruction, because I taught as well. I didn't teach to begin with because I was so busy at recruiting and serving students. Eventually, I slowly moved into, years later, to teach one class. I taught one class. I taught a class in counseling, and then on my own, for overload, I was encouraged to teach a Chicano Studies course in social science. So I was able to go see that instructional side. That helped. So later on, it was really mixed. So I was managing, I was counseling, teaching, recruiting. So I had my fingers in a lot of different things, and I liked that. I really liked the variety and variation of responsibilities. It was exciting. And there were plenty of positive and changes that I saw, and it really outweighed the challenges that were, the battles that existed. So overall, I mean, there's a lot of good then, and I see, even today, I see, I'm satisfied, and it's good to see some things, some efforts that are continuing as a result of the groundwork we laid.
I came in 1977 as a part-time instructor, and then in January of 1982, I shared a contract actually with Jan Beal. We became A1 reading teacher, and we did that for about a year and a half, and by September of '82, she went to IVC, and I stayed here at Saddleback, and we both had then at that point full-time contracts. So all the way till 2004 when I retired. In terms of what brought me to Saddleback, it was actually a graduate program. Going way back, when I had children and quit teaching, I was a high school English teacher and thought that was definitely what I was going to do the rest of my life. But I did quit when I had children and decided I could not be an English teacher and a mother at the same time. So I went into reading and got my master's degree, and concentrated on secondary education in that program, but also had a lot of exposure to adult learning and the more adult population, and had some experiences teaching, more like student teaching in a community college at Fullerton, and I just loved it. I just loved it. So I applied at Saddleback and got this part-time job. Not on campus, however. Saddleback had quite an outreach program at the El Toro Marine Base and at the Santa Ana helicopter pad. And I taught there originally. It was a wonderful experience. It truly was a grand introduction. I certainly wasn't bothered by anything on campus. They had no idea whether I was going or not. I guess students would have complained had I not shown up. But the military population was fascinating. I had soldiers, of course, Marines, I guess I would say, but also their dependents. And it was a wonderful experience. The facility was, some barracks someplace. It was not clean. It was the worst of circumstances. And since Saddleback had taken over that program from Santa Ana Community College, their materials were there, but so antiquated. It was a call for innovation on my part and very challenging, but I did enjoy it. And I stayed there for, well, the program was disbanded eventually. And then I moved back onto campus and started my career here.